And we're recording. Welcome to SIG Architecture for March 14th, 2019. All right, Brian, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, yeah, I know a bunch of people are at the open source leadership summit. I was there. We have to do some SIG Arch administrivia stuff after this. But we have Windows GA conformance subproject onboarding. We have the right folks here, and maybe we don't. And Paris is going to be talking about mentoring and succession planning from SIG contributor experience. So let's talk about Windows GA. Looking to see if we have anyone from that effort here. If not, we'll push it later. I can't tell who the phone is. I think Michael was going to join, but I don't see him on. So let's push that later. Conformance, we do have a couple of people I see. So we have a few volunteers to help with the conformance test effort. We have Aaron did some work on the project board, consolidating the project boards. So thank you, Aaron. We have a few volunteers to help that we need to spend some effort onboarding. So I just wanted to ask whether they thought we should have a short weekly meeting in order to get that started, since the current working group meetings are monthly, and we can go through some of the outstanding issues and review them together, and talk about how we manage the project board and things like that. What do you think about that, Aaron?
Could you say the last part of that?
Sorry. Just whether we should have weekly meetings to onboard the new people and do some shadow reviews and discuss how to do project management and fan-out effort and things like that.
Yes, I absolutely think that's a great idea. So to me, it's sort of like the initial part of this effort. There was a lot of discussion of like, is conformance like an architecture thing, or is it this CNCF conformance working group thing? And I think like the actual doing the work is SIG architecture. It's subprojects can have meetings. This is already supported in SIG YAML now. So if somebody wants to put that meeting together and run it, we have all the infrastructure in place to support that. And I think that would be a great idea, with the caveat that I cannot be that person at present.
I'd be happy to pull up pull requests, but I think bi-weekly is probably sufficient, I think, with the current resources we have, unless other folks feel otherwise.
Well, we have 3 new volunteers who are planning to try to onboard and walk through the review process.
Okay. Well, I can do it weekly and then see what the feedback is.
Yeah, I just thought, until we get those people.
Probably just has to be for a little while.
Yeah, just for a little while. So I don't know if it needs to be officially weekly, but at least have one meeting to discuss like what we're going to do. And
sure, I'll do a PR to the community repo and get some feedback there, and then also send out to the SIG Arch mailing list.
Yeah, what Tim will need in support is one of the SIG Arch chairs to create a recurring meeting using the SIG Arch Zoom account for him.
Yeah, I'll send out an email. Like what we typically do when we break out subprojects is we do what's called doodles and docs. So I'll get the docs set up and I'll send out a doodle.
And Tim, if you need to get a meeting set up through SIG Architecture, feel free to hit me up. I'm happy to help tie off the logistics. Sounds great.
Cool, thank you. And let's see, looking at the set of people here. Michael is on. Are you ready to talk about Windows GA? You're muted, maybe.
Yeah, still can't hear you.
You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
No,
No.
not good. Weird something.
Can you hear me?
Barely. Not. You're breaking up very badly.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, finally. The VMware pushed an update to Zoom, so it's not behaving very well. All right, sorry about that, Brian. I was there earlier too. I just couldn't unmute. So on the Windows front, so we were able to get pretty much all of the three main requirements that we wanted for GA, which was validating on the CAP, all of the what's working, what's not working, and what may work in the future post GA. We updated all of those. The CAP is up to date and merged in as in of late last week. We were able to finalize all the PRs that we had in our table. We pretty much closed all of them before code freeze, and we merged the last one on Tuesday. And the last part of it was getting all our runs on test grid for GCP as well as Azure to be green. And we also pretty much got vSphere green as well for the most part. So the three main requirements that we have for GA were those three, and we kind of validated them. So part of the reason why I put Windows on the agenda for SIG architecture was to make sure that all of you guys were all good with the plan that we're taking forward to take Windows to stable. And if there are any issues or objections, at least we get to hash them out now early.
Yeah, thanks for all the work on that. I think the CAP has helped tremendously make it really clear what the Windows support does. And as I understand, some amount of that detail is also going into the user-facing documentation, which is great. Also, definitely very happy to see lots of tests running and lots of green tests. I know you've been also keeping Aaron in the loop. I don't know if Aaron, as release lead, has any.
I have no objections other than, it's not an objection, but I felt like one of the concerns of this group was making sure that the user expectations were set very clearly about what behavior was not supported today versus what behavior was not ever supported. And I'm curious if we feel as though that has been sufficiently documented.
So from that aspect, Aaron, you're 100% right. We don't expect anybody to go and read the CAP. So we did two things. That we added a contributors guide for Windows. That was merged yesterday morning. And we'll obviously keep updating that over time. That doesn't really have any 1.14 limitations. So it's going to be a living document. The second part is the documentation. That's undergoing review right now. The PR has been submitted. We have probably about 10 folks that are looking at it and commenting from Microsoft, from the docs team, as well as other contributors to Kubernetes. And that has very detailed items about what's working in Windows and what should not be working. There are some things that are not working and we didn't put blockers on. We realized that in SIG Windows that in certain situations a user might use them and it just won't work on Windows. So for example, the pod security context, right? AppArmor, SE Linux, those are not working. We didn't put a block on that. So if someone doesn't read our documentation, they might get into a couple of situations like that. We are filing PRs for some of the items that we think will never work on Windows to explicitly block them. So if someone has those definitions in the pod spec, will give them an error early on rather than them having the expectation that's working. Some of that work is ongoing. It will not finish by 1.14, but we'll slowly merge some of that work in.
I mean, That sounds acceptable to me. If everybody else in this group is happy, I'm happy. My thoughts then go to like patch releases and how we're going to deal with that, but nothing blocking today.
Yeah, and I'm pretty happy. I haven't looked at the latest documentation PR in detail, but if lots of other people are looking at it, I probably don't need to. I'm pretty satisfied by the level of detail in the KEP, and that probably needs to be simplified some for user documentation. But you know, basically, there were a few major high-level issues, I think, that could be conveyed, could be used to summarize it pretty easily. So I'm not too worried about that. I think it'll be a while before it gets a lot of usage anyway. So, you know, as we get more user feedback, hopefully we'll use that feedback to both fix bugs and also update the documentation with what's, you know, people find confusing about it. So
I will give some guidance for moving forward. My concerns looking forward are things like conformance and getting that right. I appreciate that there was a lot of furious effort to kind of push things forward, and we may find that we need to kind of untangle things a little bit and draw the lines a little bit more clearly, and that's really important when it comes to conformance. I also believe that there are a number of test images that are built from source code that's not yet in the Kubernetes tree, and that's something that I would like to see happen. But I'm taking it on good faith that the Windows equivalents of some of the E2E test images don't have like magical gates to just work during end-to-end tests and behave differently elsewhere.
Yeah, on the images perspective, we worked with Tim Hawking, and we pushed some of our images to GR.
you're breaking up again, Michael.
So to be clear, it's not about the registry where the images live. It's just making sure it's the same source code.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was work underway to move those to a Kubernetes SIG repo, I believe. I don't know what the current status of that is.
I'm not familiar.
So to be clear, a lot of the test images are not, like, you couldn't have one image for both. Like, there's test images where it's like, it's doing BusyBox. Well, that's not gonna, I mean, you're just not gonna have the same image for that.
I get that. I totally get that. I just think that I'm under the impression that not all of the images that are used by the Windows tests are built from source code that's upstream right now.
But I mean, I guess that's the state of the art for the ETs in general, I guess. I mean, and we can try and improve that, but like that is this, like if you ever look through the EDEs, it's a random collection of whatever some developer tried to think about doing on a particular day.
A lot of the images used in the E2Es are built from source code in the test E2E images directory, but we don't have to rat hole on this here. Like I said, I'm not blocking on this. I'm just talking about work we want to think about looking.
Anyway, quite a few of them are in the Kubernetes SIG's Windows testing repo. I don't know if there are any missing or if the current released versions of the images are built from the source in that repo, but there's quite a bit there already.
We can follow up on that and make sure that we address your concerns.
Sounds good.
Is there anything else that anybody else has any concerns on Windows before we move forward with calling it stable?
I assume you're also working on the release notes for this with the release team?
Already post, we haven't worked at all on the release notes, but we'll probably just capture a small part of what we put in the blog, or we'll work with them. I'll put that in our to-dos.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I assume this is going to be one of the major announcements for 114. So we just want to make sure it's represented. Okay. Anything else? I think we're I didn't catch
I think
that.
that's it.
Okay, great.
I was saying that's it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have Paris on to talk about mentoring and succession planning. You know, one of the issues that we've been talking about is how to get more people involved, both API reviews and in conformance testing and in SIG architecture generally. So we invited Paris to come talk about what SIG contributor experience has been working on in that area. I'm going to mute now.
Or whatever. Yay for sitting in rooms with people and using two computers. All right.
So just walk through your slides there.
Okay. Can I get a thumb from someone, thumbs up that you can hear me and see me and everything?
Yep.
Yes, you're good.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. So before I get started, yesterday, Josh Burkus and I did a presentation at Open Source Leadership Summit on not your average mentoring talk. It was pretty much about some of the high-level things that we put in place within this project. Some of the things all of you are very familiar with, like the release team, and it sounds like you're doing very similar things with API review. I just heard the community meeting that Matt gave, and it sounds like everybody's on to a really good start here as far as mentoring is concerned. So I was pretty much planning on giving a lot of this talk to architecture, but I'm gonna do something a little bit different now, and I'm gonna go into some really tactical things that I think we could do that would have an impact. So let's get started. First up is always your house. Oh, and by the way, I did do a lot of this with SIG networking as well, and if Tim's here, he can chime into some of the work that they're doing too. The first step, like I always tell everyone, is fixing your house. I don't know if it's a phrase that people here are familiar with, but you should always fix your house before you invite other people in it. And this includes growing the people that are currently in it as well, because foundations are important. And so I just really did a quick bulleted list at the bottom for things that we need to get in order for this SIG. Labeling, I know labeling is a travesty and there's a zillion labels and things like that, but people poke around when we ask for, when we're explicitly asking for them to step up into roles, they're going to be poking around. So it's always good to have issue hygiene regardless and PR hygiene. So labeling and contributor experience, and people that work closely with contributor experience can actually come in and do sort of an audit if that's something that you're interested in. Especially when it's coming to first new contributors as well as growing the ones that you have. So really good stuff from people in contributor experience that can come in if you want and talk about it. There's actually a couple of live conversations that we're having with networking as well in regards to issue triage specifically. Clean and audit your owner's files as people are getting promoted into these things. We do have a lot of inactivity. There's tons of issues that are set right now. DIMS, I know, leading a couple efforts. I saw Brian commented on one earlier. This is super critical and stuff and work, and work that can be done while we do the rest of this work as well. But this is important because as we grow a new set of leaders within the project and within architecture, we just need to make sure that they have clear paths, and one of those includes making sure that the people doing the work are showing. A contributing markdown file is super critical. We, of course, have a main contributor guide, but that main contributor guide's scope is really to make sure it covers the gamut of the project and not necessarily go into any super specifics. So if this SIG has things that are a part of the process that aren't necessarily a part of other SIGs, or you think that people contribute to the project or this part of the project in a way where like you see issues, like call them out on a contributing markdown file, call out all the things that they are going to need to know in order to be successful with this SIG. that's super important to be explicit in those areas. And we've actually had some great success. I know Michael's on the call right now. He just did one for Windows. And then what we can do is we can link out those contributor guides to from the main contributor guide as well. And then last, for like the house getting in order part, is roles, which I will go into a little bit. And like I said, I just found out about the API review stuff, and Jordan's awesome for heading this up. But I did want to touch on building teams outside of just this API review. I think this is cool because it sounds like something that's well scoped, and that's exactly what roles should be. But I'm sure there's plenty of other things that this SIG does outside of just API review that can deserve a team, or people who are in sort of shadow roles, if you will. So I think each one of you, especially if you're an owner and you're listening to this, you should really think about what can you take off of your plate. What don't you like about your contributing journey here? What do you feel like we could deserve to have somebody do? Those are things that we really should think about creating roles for. I know, like, for instance, like, just to get super personal, like, I'm ready to get rid of a lot of moderation duties that I do for this project. I think a lot of you already know that already. So we're creating moderation teams and contributor experience. So this is a way for us to scale in areas where we didn't necessarily think about that, say, 3 months ago. So I definitely wanted to hit that point. So I feel like the initial step that this SIG should do outside of getting those houses in order is really think about the needs of the project, or the SIG. I keep calling it the project, but this micro project. So it's important that we figure those things out. And a lot of these roles too, like I put new contributor ambassador on here, a lot of these roles can actually help out with these growing pains that we're seeing in mentoring. So like a new contributor ambassador could host a meeting once a month, and you would delegate to this individual to like grow a team of people who could help actually onboard people quicker than just reading documentation, sort of like an AMA, if you will, but it's set on your agenda. People know about it. It's a place where they can go and just get live support immediately, just to get kind of either ramped up or whatever. I mean, it doesn't even need to be a new contributor ambassador. It can be it just could be a contributor ambassador if you want. Like a communications lead too is another role that I thought that would be super beneficial for this group, because most people are so in depth with just getting some of the technical specifics out the door and releasing features, which is awesome, but like, let's communicate better. And one of the ways that we can do that is by having someone have that as a duty. And then that person could be responsible for making sure that certain things are released on a cadence, like for instance, CAPS, every week or something. That's just like an example for PM, but like for architecture, like API reviews, even like somebody that could figure out how to automate communications around certain steps of that to make sure that everybody is in the know. Just stuff like that would be super helpful, I think, in these growing stages, if you will. I even included a little photo there of the role books that the release team does. And I think that like when you set your issues for these roles, so for instance, contributor experience, actually, do I have this up? No, but I have it in this talk. Contributor experience, just pretty much filed an issue that said we want to create all of these roles and come help us. And then these people who will get nominated into these roles will ultimately build the teams and build the guidelines. And the scope of done here is when the role books are done. So then we kind of have a start and a stop there. So the other thing that I think we could do a lot better job of, as far as mentoring is concerned, is generating content that's not documentation. People have different learning styles. This is something that I am studying heavily as of late, especially now that Dr. Anita Sharma from OSU, it's Oregon State University's open source lab, are studying mentoring within open source communities and things along those lines. And they found out that successful mentoring communities are ones that have ample learning content that isn't documentation. So Live streaming and recording content is super hot these days. I think a lot of you see that in your networks. People use Twitch to do live code reviews, things like that. It really accelerates people's learning environments, and it's something that you could also delegate to other people to help out with. So live API review sessions, streamed or recorded, we have access, and we, being contributor experience, has access to YouTube, which is an awesome source for us to get out this content. But yesterday on the steering committee meeting, Tim St. Clair sort of did this like live issue triage session, and I was sort of blown away at how the meeting was progressing. And I think that if we even just do, like, as you're going through issues, even if you record yourself talking out loud as you're labeling and as you're doing things with issue triage, just the talking out loud piece is really where people learn, especially in distributed environments, like the ones that we have. And as we grow our contributors in other time zones, this is critically important. But like, you can even think about it as, okay, let's show people what some common dependency failures are, or where people fail a lot in Kubernetes. You can talk about the problems that you see in Kubernetes. You can talk about the code structure problems that you see that maybe other people could tackle that aren't necessarily covered in issues. So the TLDR here is, let's fire up a Zoom, share your screen, and start talking. We can either do that for you through something called Meet Our Contributors. Meet Our Contributors, if you don't know, happens once a month, and it's on the first Wednesday of the month, and it's super fun. Anywhere between 3 to 6 contributors get on the line, and we ask live questions. It usually works itself out between 10 and 12 questions. And this is where a lot of people advertise for their SIG as well. So like when we'll advertise on Twitter and all kinds of other sources, aka we'll make sure that it's a targeted demographic of contributors. And not just like randoms on the internet that are watching this stuff, which is cool too if you're a random on the internet watching this video right now. But it's really targeted to our crew so that we know that we're getting value out of it. And what you see on the screen now is just some of the latest videos. And the cool part is I didn't even have to type in Kubernetes. It's already coming up as first search results, which is great, exactly what we wanted it to. We also do code-based tours, live code reviews, all types of fun stuff. And the code-based tour for Kubernetes, Stefan just randomly decided to take someone's question that I thought was a troll question at first, which was, oh, describe Kubernetes. And he just fired up his GitHub and started going through it. And it was wonderful, and now it has 900 views. So the content is definitely worthwhile for us, and all the feedback that I get from people that watch it is that they want more of it. So let's get back to that. All right. The other thing about the stuff that's not documentation or even videos is the contributor summit to your advantage, and the chairs and tech leads and things from SIGs for this one and other SIGs will be getting a message within the next 24 hours about Barcelona specifically, but think about even something like as far away as San Diego, think about Shanghai. How can you as a SIG take advantage of this? Could we run workshops that would make people more informed? Could we do curating better discussion groups up front so that they would be more well structured so that you'll have what you need out of them? So I think that right there is a hole that we aren't necessarily filling. Group mentoring. So I wanted to bring this up because this has been a test bed for contributor experience for a while. And honestly, Cluster Lifecycle does this without even knowing my preach about it. It's something that they have found works well. Just to tell you a story, when I was taking engineering classes in college, one of the best I think sources of mentoring support for me at that time period was my peers. And having an academic counselor like mentor all of us together, because we all had same goals, and a lot of the times it was taking tests. So I implemented that into some different SIGs and subgroups who needed mentoring. So a lot of them didn't have the time either, which is obviously I think the thing that we're trying to solve for the most in the Kubernetes project in general is just we can't grow time. So group mentoring will really help with that. So you give a clear goal, which is, hey, be an approver in 3 months. And how do you find out those goals? You get them from the community membership document. So then we get to also test out the validity of this live document. Because for instance, if it says that you need, 20 PRs or something like that, as far as the structure is concerned, if they haven't already built up that natural trust with the project, then, we should be able to go through these guidelines and still establish that trust with them through that. But it provides clear goals to people. Everybody's working together on the thing, and we can create safe spaces for them. So some of those safe spaces could include like private Slack channels where people won't feel like they're asking anything embarrassing. Maybe, they want clarification as to what a sub-project is again, something like that. But we can spin up group mentoring at any time. This isn't something that is necessarily structured in any way. The only thing that we need is the intent to do it. And at least 1 to 2 mentors who would be able to mentor anywhere between 3 to 10 people at a time. I know that sounds daunting, but I definitely have testimonials from people that have done it and said that, oh, wow, it was almost like just mentoring one person because eventually the peers did mentor themselves. So it's a thing and it can happen. So we can think about that as well. This is the be explicit part, and this boils down into just what we're looking for from people. Ask and listen. I think that's the most important part as we grow our mentoring programs here, is that we're doing both. Listening piece is crucial. I'll show you, hold on. Here it is. So last year we did a Kubernetes contributor survey. One of the questions was, what's your biggest blocker? You can see the green there is not enough time in the week. And then you can see the red on the left is don't know enough to mentor. So obviously we can't control time, nor can we control other people's schedules. That's on them. But what we can control is what they don't know. And that's a reason why I feel like I'm pushing the content so hard, is because these are areas where we can do better with if we just try. But the not enough hours in the week, this is why I don't push one-on-one mentoring, especially just random one-on-one mentoring like via forums and things like that. I just think there's too much level of ambiguity there that we just unfortunately can't control. So that's sort of why I think being explicit and listening to the fact that people don't have the time is so crucial. So on this thing, I put that, on this slide, I put that maybe you all should have a survey yourselves about why people don't contribute to architecture, the hardest parts about contributing to architecture, what topics do they struggle with continually, what learning content do they want to see, what's some of the questions that you would ask a mentor. I think this is actually how I started the talk yesterday, because this is how I heard that some of the people that were wanting one-on-one mentoring actually don't need it. They just needed better documentation in some cases, or they just needed like a support channel and things along those lines. So if you are explicit with what people are wanting, then you'll be able to better tailor what we're providing them. And that's pretty much it for me. Questions, concerns, comments?
Cool. Thank you, Paris. So the ask and listen point, I guess, is to ask how others are, where others are having difficulty engaging with SIG architecture and where they want to engage. That.
Yeah. The good old Zoom. Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate. I think a lot of what I just discussed could be several work streams that are going on at the same time. I don't necessarily think any of this is like, you know, we need to do X, Y, and Z before we do the rest. But I think the quickest things that can be done are identifying the areas where people need learning and then serve it to them. So that's, and I feel like I actually have a lot of content like that from past contributor experience surveys, even stuff that's related to architecture that I can share with you all. But I think that's definitely a key piece here.
Okay, yeah, if you do have any feedback, that would be great. We'd be interested in seeing that.
Sure.
So I kind of feel like in terms of getting the class together and showing them how it's done and having everybody rally around a common set of work, Jordan has now effectively set that up with API review. And I've put the infrastructure in place for conformance, and Tim will help rally folks, and Tim's has been thoroughly helpful as well. So the other currently enumerated sub-project that belongs to SIG architecture is code organization. It seems like we ought to put together something for that if we want that to be a sustaining, ongoing thing. Because at present, I feel like it's been a bunch of piecemeal project proposals. I think I just saw K fly across some notification the other day. And I'd love to understand like the broader vision there.
Yeah, I was thinking we would focus on the two other sub-projects which are actually somewhat active right now, the API reviews and conformance testing, and get those on more solid footing, just to like double down on our effort there, and before really starting up that new effort. Although I know Jordan has been poking at part of it a little bit.
Yeah, I think the API review stuff mostly has a toehold. A lot of what Paris just talked about, like fleshing out roles, and especially for API review, where it's kind of a good ramp from training to greater involvement. I think we want to have a good idea about who the people are in each of those roles, so that we can target them for additional training or shadowing opportunities. So following up with what Paris talked about, getting that on more solid footing. For the code organization, we're talking about the Go module stuff.
That's what I was thinking of. You were doing recently, yes.
Yeah, that is not really a rethinking so much as a kind of evolution of where we are today. I'll be writing that up and trying to make forward progress on that for 115, but it's not really fundamental change.
Yeah, I think the challenge with the code organization is it's not really a coherent effort that we can onboard more people to yet. We need to have someone kind of leading it and plotting out a roadmap before we can onboard more people. It's just people have so far been solving problems as they come up, and they were blocking some other thing. So it has grown, you know, iteratively and organically, and we're hoping to do better than that. But until we have better organization around the efforts that are ongoing and have some amount of staffing right now, I feel like that's a little bit too much to bite off.
I mean, I feel like this is a topic, code organization, that needs a contributor, but not sort of a leaf contributor, more of a stem contributor, someone who's willing to take the whole thing and bring up other contributors to get the work done. Like, I'm happy to help bootstrap that person. I don't have the time to help people with sort of the leaf efforts. I think there's a lot of exploration that needs to be done before the leaf efforts can start.
I think that's a key too about the roles, and I just didn't have enough time necessarily just to get through all of the concepts of the roles. But I mean, what we're essentially doing is seeding these roles for other people to build. So I mean, you are obviously giving these people a level of trust and credit, but at the same time, you still will have to approve their guidelines and rule books. So, I mean, it's just giving someone the empowerment to do the work and build the team.
That's all fair. I think it's maybe on my mind because I would view that as the group in charge of the use of Go modules. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I believe like the next version of Go 6 months from now will require Go modules.
I think it is turned on by default. You can still opt out, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, it's imminent. Something in that direction is imminent.
Yeah. So it's just the one that feels like a little gooey and inapproachable to new contributors who have questions. But I agree with the consensus that we should double down on what we have, get it up and running.
Okay, so thanks Paris for that. I found that very helpful. We'll definitely have some to-dos, some action items to come out of that, such as defining some roles. We're going to set up I see some people who asked to be involved in, or who are involved in conformance show up later. Tim St. Clair is going to send out a doodle. Maybe we should, if you want to be in the conformance testing specific meetings to help on board with reviewing conformance tests and driving that effort forward, maybe drop your name into the notes doc under that topic, which is the second topic in the agenda notes for today. And the whole SIG architecture group will meet again in 2 weeks because we're on bi-weekly meetings. Definitely, if things come up, use the mailing list. Just my continual reminder that GitHub notifications and Slack are not as reliable, at least not for me.
Just one more thing. I know that there was a lot of detail. I didn't necessarily intend to present all of it, but at the same time, I thought that it might be useful for everybody to see some of the things that are already going on with the project so that you can pick and choose the things that you think are applicable to architecture. And then if you want to do any deep dives on some of the stuff, like how we actually get into the specifics of going from 0 to 100 on, like, for instance, like group mentoring, just let me know and we can do a deep dive either at this meeting again, at a contributor experience meeting, or we can do a side meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll have to, after we do some initial discussion, we'll try to figure out how to best engage there. Okay, well, I think that's it. So thanks everybody for joining today.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Thursday.